Hey, what's going on, beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time in your day to hang out with me. I really appreciate it. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing EDH updates. And the last time I filmed this video was in June. So, wow, it's been a really long time. And to be honest with you, part of that reason of why that's the way that it is because I feel like we haven't been playing Magic. And that's like a really huge aspect of why I haven't really done this video, or feel like I have the need. And so there really hasn't just been like a lot to say. And I also think too, I like currently have like 11 commander decks, which is pretty wild. And it's like, where do we just keep adding? Like some people are like, I only want like this, like my friend Travis always like, oh, I'm gonna like take those decks apart and I'm gonna build something new. And I'm like, I just like to stick to the same thing. Anyone else like that? But then I'm like, okay, cool. But then I'm gonna have just like, when do I stop? Do I just get to like 20 commanders? And I'm like, this is the cutoff. Like my bag's overflowing with commander decks. Like I'm at the point, I think if I need to like buy another super hive, I think that I'm at like, cause I'll definitely, if that's the case, that would be so wild. Cause I'm someone who's like, I'm always gonna bring like all my decks during commander night. Like that's just the reality, because you never know, like you're like, oh, I'm not gonna play that, and then it's like, what if it comes and you don't have it, you know? That's my thought. But so in this video I want to talk about 3 of my separate commander decks, and one of them is a tweak or tweaks that I've been making, and the second is a project that I had talked about, my last one that I had basically done, and I basically did that and built it, and then the third is a new project. So let's just jump into it. Let's first start talking about Teysa. So basically, Teysa has gone through like one of the biggest, I would say, changes overall, at least in like a very short period of time that I can remember. Basically, what I decided to do with Teysa is I decided to run basically cards that are like, when this creature dies, create a 1/1 token. That's the general, like, very basic overview of the way that the deck works. Basically, and on their own, that doesn't really sound like very overwhelming or anything like that. But with Teysa, it's really nice because you get double the amount of tokens, which is really nice. And I also run the card in there that I'm forgetting. I can picture the card right now, but it's basically Doubling Season, but in white. I forgot what the name of that card is. I can like picture the art and whatever. But anyways, so I have that card in there, which is really cool because then I get more tokens, which is really nice. And so I feel like also too that the point of that deck wasn't to ever really be like super competitive or super wild or crazy or anything like that. The deck was just honestly to make like a bunch of tokens, and also in a different way than Alila, because Alila is also tokens, my fairy deck, but that's more like I have like 4 3/3s, and that's how I'm gonna kill you. Where Teysa is like, I'm gonna have like 12 1/1s and overwhelm and swarm that way, and I don't want to make them too similar. I'm not really into that. So I would say that's kind of what I'm trying to do, and the deck has definitely undergone like a ton of changes, and I'm still working on it. Like I'm still not set in stone. It was so funny. I was like looking at the deck the other day because I was like taking out cards because I got some new foils for it, and I was like, ooh, this card needs to come out, this card needs to come out, and there was like 3 or 4 cards where I'm like, okay, cool. And that might not sound like a lot, but I feel like in Commander, every slot to me is like so precious, where I'm like, I don't want flex slots. I just want my list. I want to get to the point in my Commander decks where it's hard for me to take cards out because I just love everything, where everything is like perfectly fits in, if that makes sense. So that's kind of like the deal with Teysa. I'm actually really excited to do that updated deck tech for you guys because it's gonna be pretty different. Like, and not just the, oh, I got a lot of foils, which I mean, yeah, but it's gonna be like the types of cards that I've got are like really different. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting that whenever I do. Also got some chai today, very excited. So all right, that is that. Let's jump into talking about Rain, Angel of Rebirth. And I was just looking over my the video that I had filmed in June, which that just feels like forever ago at that point. Like that's just crazy to think about. And basically I had talked at that point, I hadn't yet built the deck, but I was pulling cards for it and getting the deck in order. And so yes, I have since built Rain, and actually funny, that's going to be the next video, I believe, that's going to go on my channel, so be on the lookout for that. That's going to be upcoming, and I'm really excited for you guys to see that deck because it's basically just like Naya good stuff. The really fun part about that deck that I've really enjoyed is, first off, it pushes me to run cards that run red in it, and I've realized this about myself. Okay, I'm not a red mage, like yes, we've all know that, but I realize that I don't mind when cards have red in them. So like I will never build like a mono red deck. Like here's the reality about me is like I feel like I could come to a point where I might build like a mono blue deck. I don't think I will, and if anything, I'd probably consider doing mono green, because the reality is I already have white, I have angels, and I already have black, I have zombies, and so like I'm not gonna build another unless they're just very different. Like I can't foresee myself doing another monocolored, deck of those. I just don't really think I would do that. And so I will never, like, quote me on this, I will never build a mono red deck. Like, I couldn't, what would I run in there other than, like, Blasphemous Act? Like, for real, like, what would I do? Faithless Looting? Like, okay, those are, like, the 2 red cards, like, I know. Like, come on. I don't know. I don't know what else I would run, for real. But Reen has really pushed me to, I don't want to say change my opinion on red, because I don't know if it's going to happen, guys. I don't think it will happen, but it has gotten me to see the value in running cards that have red in it, and that's really, like, the part, is, like, creatures that have it in there, because the whole point of the deck is multicolored. Like, I don't think I have any creatures in there that I can think of off the top of my head that are just one color. Like, everything is a multicolored creature. So I can capitalize off of her, because not only do they get +1/+0, but whenever they die, they get bounced back to your hand, which is so good for like ETB type stuff. One thing I really love about Reen is that the deck is that it goes in. I love when I don't get punished for things dying. I'm a huge fan of that. Like I love when I'm able to just be like, you've killed my thing and I don't care. I feel like that is one of the most satisfying things to do, and I feel like I build quite a lot of decks that have recursion, or like I don't want to be in a situation where someone board wipes who's shockingly not me, because I feel like I'm normally the one who does that, and if someone board wipes and I have, like, my board is destroyed, I have 1 card in my hand. That is, like, worst case scenario. Everything is awful. Like, all hope is lost. You know what I mean? I never want to be in a situation like that. So I like situations where I'm able to recur a lot, and I'm not, like, where I'm able to do things where I can, like, rebuild very easily or something like that, and Reen really does that. And so I have a couple of things that are like, when this enters the battlefield, this happens, and then it's like, okay, if it dies, that's fine, it goes back to my hand and I can do that aspect. So I really like that. So, it's funny, I think after playing her and seeing her in action, I'm like, she's so, I feel like she's very underrated. Like, I feel like not a lot of people, like, pay attention to her for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why, because her mana cost really isn't that wild. Like, 5 mana isn't that bad. And the thing is, too, you're running green, so you're running all this ramp, and so I have, like, my typical green, like, things that get me lands, like Rampant Growth and things like that. But on top of that, I also have cards like I have this one creature, I forgot the name, but you guys will see it in the deck check when you watch it, where it's like, it's like 1 mana and you tap it and it adds the Naya colors into your pool, which is like so incredibly good. That card might be mono green now that I'm thinking of that card. But yeah, it's just Naya good stuff. That's kind of like the whole general gist. I don't want to talk that much about it because you guys are going to see it in the deck tech when you watch it next week. So definitely stay tuned for that and check that out when that comes out, because I'm really excited about it. I have to like put it out and organize it on Tapped Out, and that's going to be, it's always like such a process whenever I have to do that. It's like this whole thing. All right, guys, new project. We love a new project. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, I had a totally different video filmed, thought of in my head to film, and then this just like took priority because I really, really wanted to talk to you guys about this deck. Okay, I'm building Tamishi. I'm so excited. Reality Architect. Okay. So I had mentioned this in my video where my husband and I, we talked about a set overview for Kamigawa, and I mentioned this card. I said, maybe I'll build it. And like, I just kept thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, like, I want to do that. And so I did. So here's the current state of affairs. Well, okay, first, let me just give the kind of like general point of the deck, like what the vision is, you know what I mean? Okay, first off, it says, whenever 1 or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand, draw a card, and it only triggers once each turn. So basically, there's kind of like two pieces to this deck. The first piece is like that ability where it's like bouncing stuff. Now, I just want to note that it does say non-creature, so it's not really running cards like Vapor Snag, where it's like bounce a creature, they lose life. It's not running cards like that. And on top of that, it's running like sometimes some of the aspects that I have like are lands, so that's like a really cool aspect because you can bounce lands and it triggers off of this, which is really cool. But it's also running things that are like non-creatures. So you bounce your whole goal is to bounce your stuff. So there are some like ETB effects, but it's also like good to bounce your opponent's stuff. So basically it's this aspect of this is like slowing people down is kind of like the whole name of the game. And you want to get good value off of your stuff that you're bouncing as well. So like if it's like a Pilgrim's Eye, for example, like a card like that. And that kind of segues into the other point, which is that card is an artifact, which segues into the other aspect, which is X and white. So it's 2 color. Return a land you control to its owner's hand. I like that it's a land. It's just 1 land because, you know, one of Paul's concerns, he's like, I'm worried your deck is going to be too slow. And I was like, I think the point is I'm slowing down everybody. I think that's kind of like the whole point, you know? And there are quite a few. The mana cost on is actually pretty cheap because the point is I want to be doing something on everyone's turn. So like obviously this is going to take turns to build like the board, but the best case scenario is that you're able to bounce, like let's just say you have your turn and you have 3 other opponents, you have 4 people, you want to be bouncing stuff. I mean, ideally it'd be nice if you could do it every turn and that way you draw 4 cards, which is really cool. So there's going to be a lot of like no maximum hand size stuff for sure because I'm going to be drawing a lot of cards. It's also blue, so there you go. But then anyways, the second part is return a land you control to its owner's hand. Return target artifact. So it is you control, so you can't bounce your opponent's stuff. What's really nice too with this is that also it synergizes with itself. So like there's not only do I have all the spells and all the artifacts and enchantments and instant sorceries and things that bounce my stuff and my opponent's stuff, I have this that also can do it, which is really nice. So I bounce land and return target artifact or enchantment with converter mana cost X or less from your to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. So the way that this is a little bit different, I would say, than some of my other decks and kind of how I've like approached this is I'm going to be running cards like Detention Sphere and like things like that where like I wouldn't necessarily normally like run a card like that because my removal is going to look a lot different in this deck. And so it is going to have instants and it is going to have a good amount of sorceries, but there's not going to be as many creatures in the deck. So it's probably, my vision is probably going to be like 15 or so creatures, maybe even less than that. And the bulk of it is going to be instant sorceries that bounce things. And then also some artifacts and enchantments, like Dovin's Acuity is like a great card that's like going in this deck that I'm really excited about. So, my other thing too that I'm thinking of, and this is kind of where like I want some feedback and I want some help, is like, I don't know if I want to do like, and I'm not saying to go full Death and Taxes, but running like some Death and Taxes cards because, again, the whole point is slowing everybody down. And so running cards like Rule of Law, for example, you know, things like that. And so I'm like contemplating on running those. And my other rationale behind running Rule of Law is it's an enchantment. So if someone destroys it, I can always bring it back from the graveyard, which is so cool. So it's, I feel like I'm trying to do a lot of different things. And I feel like they're all good. I just don't know quite the direction I want to do because the reality is I have so many cards pulled out for this deck that I want to run. And like I only have, I mean, when you take away lands, it's like 65 slots and that's really not like, it doesn't feel like a lot, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of struggling right now with like exactly figuring out the vision and the direction and narrowing cards down. So I have like a bunch of cards. I have a Google Doc and I have it on Tapped Out, just like on my I have a huge maybe board, and I have cards that I pulled out that like we own that I just grabbed. And so yeah, it's also like a little hard for me too because like I feel like my instinct is to grab a lot of cards like what's like a good like example of a card that I would like normally run that I'm not running in this deck. Like maybe not necessarily so much that, but like the number of things. So like my instinct upon running like white and blue, white in particular, is like I'm gonna run all these board wipes, and like I might not be running all of them because I might not need to do that because I'm bouncing things. You see what I mean? So also too, I need those slots for bouncing things because that's my whole thing is drawing cards. You know, I guess another card that a win condition. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I said win condition. I don't know if I have a win condition. Okay, Aetherflux Reservoir is one card that I'm thinking of in particular, that could be a win condition. And the really cool part about this is the safety net in this deck is pretty large, because if someone kills it, I can just bring it back with this, or I can just bounce my thing or bounce someone's spell. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's really cool, where it's like, I feel like kind of like similar to what I was talking about Reen earlier. I feel like it's like, oh, I'm going to destroy your thing. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm just going to combat what you're doing. So that's really cool. And I really like that aspect of the deck, but I really need a solid win condition. Aetherflux Reservoir, I do want to run. I'm also thinking potentially Laboratory Maniac, because I might honestly just be drawing so many cards, and not just from this, from other things as well, and that just might be a win condition. But this isn't really gonna be the, like, I'm gonna punch you with, like, creatures. This is not really, like, the point of the deck. That could be, I could do something like that, but I'm not really too sure. So if you guys know of any, like, mono blue combos, which I know sorry, not mono blue, but if you know any combos in this color that I could run, that would be, like, really helpful, because I'm not really 100% sure of what I really want to do. I wonder if I could do something with Peregrine Drake, or the other card that I'm thinking of, Palicron or whatever, the one that's like untap 7. There's like combos with that for sure, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure on like what that's gonna look like. So I'd really like to know what you guys think, and I'm also waiting for this deck to be released on EDH Rec, because I really want to see what other cards people see. I've done like a decent amount of research, like pulling cards, because I'm someone who, like, when I build a deck, I look at a lot of areas. I look at cards I have, I look at cards that, like, there'll be cards that I mention in videos, like in my underrated EDH videos. Like, I think about cards that, like, I've talked about in there, for example. I'll think about cards like, I'll go into EDH Rec, I'll go into look at different people's tapped outs, I'll look at, like, I'll go in the Gatherer and I'll be like, enters the battlefield. Like, I do so much, like, in-depth stuff when it comes to building a deck, because I think, like, it can be really easy to, like, just look at, like, one or two aspects, but then you're missing all these other good cards. And I want, like, the best of the best. You know what I mean? When I build something, I want, like, the best cards that I can possibly run. So, yeah, the kind of cool thing too with this deck is that a lot of the cards are really cheap, because a lot of them are just like return target whatever to its hand, and that card is like literally cents, and you can buy the foil for like 20 cents, which is awesome. So I love that. But the cards that are expensive are expensive. You know what I mean? Because like one of the cards I want to run is like Cloudstone Curio, and that card's very expensive, but I really want to get it because it's perfect in this deck. So it's kind of an interesting hybrid of, like, some cards are really cheap, like when they're cheap, under $1 cheap, and then other cards are like expensive because they're just really good staples to have in the deck. So I'd really like to know what cards you guys would recommend for this deck, and I'd really like to know what other projects, if there are any commander decks that you guys are planning on building at this time. So if you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I'll catch you in my next one.